Cleveland, Ohio was once home to the most beautiful neighborhood in the world. The tree-lined Euclid Avenue boasted 400 stately homes. Today, less than a dozen remain, but that won't stop us from going back in time. Join me on a video walking tour of old Euclid Avenue. We will see 32 historic stops along Euclid Avenue between Public Square and East 40th Street. The highlights of this video tour include a look at Euclid Avenue from the penthouse level of the Forest City Hotel, and we'll have a peek inside the Everett mansion. Our first stop is the Forest City House, which operated as a hotel in Cleveland's Public Square. Today, a much larger hotel stands in its place. Many businesses operated out of the main floor, with a piano store being a long-standing tenant and a noisy one. This was most likely one of the tallest structures in the city at the time. Are you curious to see the view from the top? Well, let's go straight to the penthouse and take a gander. To understand this next photograph, we would be situated on top of the Forest City House, directly where this penguin is perched. Additionally, we will orient ourselves east toward the direction of Euclid Avenue, as you can see in this historic 1800s map. Look at that view. You can see Public Square, and behind it, Euclid Avenue, which is the street we will be walking down today. Take notice, there are 4 church steeples in the background. We will see each of these churches from a much closer perspective during today's tour. For this next photograph, we will turn slightly to the right and look south. Here, you can see the commercial and industrial areas of the city. Can you spot the Ohio Canal in the background of this picture? All right, let's put our feet back on the ground and get to our next stop. We are back in Public Square, and we will be standing on the southeast quadrant looking down Euclid Avenue. In the background of this picture, you can see the St. Paul's Episcopalian Church, which is said to have burned down before its final completion. The replacement for this church is still around today, and we will see it on the last stop of today's tour. Today, a former department store turned boutique apartments occupy a large section of the previous picture. Moving right along, our next stop is just a few steps away at the intersection of East Roadway and Euclid. Here, in this perspective, we can get an understanding of what life may have been like in the late 1800s. On the right-hand side, you can see the steeple of the First Baptist Church. Today, this intersection is largely dominated by a tall commercial high-rise building. Let's go ahead and start our 2-mile trek down Euclid Avenue. Our next stop is at the corner of East 4th. In this photo, you can see the Opera House in all of its ornate fashion. The building no longer remains. Today, this is a pedestrian-only street and home to many restaurants and entertainment venues. The next stop is a block away, near the intersection of East 6th. Here is an example of a stately home with its impressive stairs. Can you find a dog statue in this picture? Today, a commercial office complex with a hotel stands in its place. Well, we won't have to go far for this next stop. Let's look across the street at the former Samuel Cowles residence. This is one of the earliest known mansions built on the avenue. Today, the site is occupied by a residential apartment community. Let's do a dance and go a few feet east. And again, look at the southern side of Euclid Avenue. Here, you will find the former Truman P. Handy residence, which later became home to many clubs, like the Union Club. Today, the site is under construction, this time for a residential high-rise. Are you ready to take a break? This guy sure is. Here, we could see a man sitting on Euclid Avenue. Further down at the corner, we can see the Euclid Avenue Methodist Episcopal Church. And you will find today that there aren't as many trees on Euclid Avenue. Let's get a closer look at that church. According to several early Cleveland records, the site prior to the church was home to a Native American earthwork. The Methodist Episcopal Church, as you can see in this picture, was torn down to make way for a bank in the early 1900s, which still stands to this day and was converted to a grocery store in 2015. Let's go diagonally opposite to where we are now. In other words, we'll go kitty corner so we can get a closer look at the First Baptist Church. If we go back to stop 1 and look out the penthouse of the Forest City House, this would have been the second of the church spires that you would have seen in the picture. This structure was torn down to make way for the Hickox building, which was demolished to make way for the Bond department store. That was later torn down to make way for the current commercial office complex that you see on the site today. Let's keep moving further down Euclid Avenue until we can get to the intersection of East 12th Street. On the right-hand side of this photograph, you will see the Elixa A. Witt residence and the Stillman Witt residence on the left. In between the two may have been the most ornate greenhouse to have ever existed. Today, an early 20th century hotel turned boutique apartments occupy the property. Next, we will go 1 block east and visit the site of the former Amasa Stone residence. And we will ask why it appears that there is a massive stone ornament on the roof. Later pictures of this home show that they may have been removed, which adds to the mystery. Today, a commercial office complex stands in its place. Let's go a few steps further and perhaps take another break. Or maybe we'll just stare in awe at the gigantic size of the Euclid Avenue Presbyterian Church. This would have been the third of the spires as seen in the penthouse picture from stop 1. Today, the site is also home to the world's largest outdoor chandelier. Let's move a little closer, and let's stand in the yard of the Chamberlain residence. Here's our friend again. This time, he's posing on the fountain. Cool shoes, dude. Today, several theaters take up all of the lots seen in the previous picture. For this next photo, we will travel across the street and look east. Again, you will see the spire of the Euclid Avenue Baptist Church in the distance, and some stately stairs of the Saunders residence. Today, a mixed-use building stands in its place. We are now leaving Playhouse Square, and we are going to enter Cleveland's campus district. At our next stop, we see the Edmund P. Morgan residence and the Euclid Avenue Baptist Church on the left. This is on the southern side of Euclid, where a residential tower now stands. To get a better perspective of the church, we will go further east and look south. This is the final of the 4 church steeples that you would have seen in the earlier penthouse photo. And here again, we will find that the same residential tower sits over the original site. Let's go diagonally opposite again, so we can get a better view of the former E.W. Ogilvy residence. This home dominated the corner with its impressive tower and mansardic roof. Today, a university building stands in its place. We're going next door to see another Truman P. Handy residence. From this perspective, we're standing in his yard, looking west at the Ogilvy residence in the distance. And again, a university building and courtyard stand in its former place. Let's go a little bit further down Euclid Avenue. Cleveland was nicknamed the Forest City. Many would credit the tree-lined Euclid Avenue. On the right-hand side of this image, you will see the Kate L. Howe residence, which is still there to this day and functions as a university building. Let's go a little bit further down Euclid Avenue to take a closer look at some of the more notable homes. We have now arrived at the Winslow residence, and all we can do is marvel at the ornate details and symmetry that this home provides. It was later demolished, and a tower was put in its place, which is now being used for university housing. As we move along, this particular area was the part of the street that many considered to be the Millionaires Row, since it featured many massive estates on the northern side. For this next stop, we will be looking at the Romney House townhomes. These young children seem to be enjoying the afternoon shade. The site today is now home to a residential apartment community. Now, we're going to head further east to see one of the more impressive estates that crowned the avenue. The Samuel Andrews residence, also referred to as Andrews Folly, since he was said to have only lived in the home for 3 years before moving to New York. It's been documented that the home was so large and took such a massive waitstaff that it was horrible to manage due to its maze-like floor plan. The home was eventually razed to discourage vagrants from taking occupancy in the home, which happens to explain why there are people just hanging out in the front window. Now, the former estate is home to a commercial business. We will be going next door, which is looking east from the front yard of the Crocker residence. Behind it are the Otis and the Eels residence, respectively. Today, the site is home to another commercial office structure. We will head down 2 more houses to get a better perspective of the Eels residence. This home featured a grand staircase and spacious rooms. It later became the Spencerian Commercial School and taught students about business. And today, the site partly operates as a driveway for a commercial office complex. One of the major reasons for the destruction of the neighborhood came from the owners themselves. It was a generally held idea that upon death, the home should be torn down so it couldn't later be used as a boarding home. In this picture, you can see the Scouting Gates, and in the background is the Williamson residence. Today, a parking lot stands in its place. For this next picture, we'll center ourselves and look directly north at the Worthington residence. The towering columns would welcome guests, in addition to the dog statue in the front yard. Today, we can also see that this is a parking lot. And if we tilt ourselves to the right, we'll see the same Scouting Gates as the earlier picture. And in the background is the Flagler residence. Later, it was torn down to make way for the Brush Estate, which was built in its place, as you can see in this photograph. Now, a non-profit organization operates on the site. Next up, we will see one of the few surviving stately homes from this era, which is the Stagler Beckwith residence. This Second Empire home and its impressive cast iron fence still grace the avenue to this day. It currently operates as a children's museum. Moving forward, we'll be looking at the Wade residences. First up is the R.P. Wade residence, which dominated the property with its landscaped gardens and statues that featured illuminated bulbs. A working fountain sat in between the 2 homes. The second home on the estate was the J.H. Wade residence, which was later torn down upon his death, while the other house used the space for a larger yard. Today, the sites are home to a government building. Now let's go check out the site of the most impressive castle to have ever taken residence on Euclid Avenue, which is the Everett homestead, otherwise known as the Everett Mansion. Sylvester T. Everett was a railroad magnate, and his mansion played host to presidents such as Lincoln, Grant, Harrison, Hayes, McKinley, Roosevelt, and Harding. But before the mansion hit the wrecking ball, it briefly survived as a family hotel, and a miniature golf course was built in the front yard. Are you ready to take a look inside? Thankfully, somebody cracked the door open for us. Let's take a gander. The first photograph shows us an incredibly detailed Moorish room. In this photograph, we can see a grand staircase with a fireplace underneath it. On the top floor of the mansion was a ballroom, as we can see here in this photo. The tour isn't over yet. Let's head over and see our final stop, which is the St. Paul's Episcopalian Church at the corner of East 40th and Euclid. If you remember back to the photo from the penthouse of Stop 1, the first of the 4 steeples belonged to the unfinished predecessor of this church. Today, the structure remains in all of its beauty. If you enjoyed the video tour of Euclid